I do understand that Ayanda Nyathi is also on standby now to further conversations with Professor Dirk Kotze. Over to you, Ayanda. Let's continue those conversations there as we continue to peel off the layers.
Yeah, that's right, Kolisi. Thanks very much indeed. The president keeping a brave face as he steps into the UNISA main campus. He, in some ways, I suppose, is the man of the moment insofar as setting the tone for the next couple of hours and, in fact, for the next day as well, especially when you consider just how much skepticism lingers over this particular gathering, which is in some ways definitely in full force. What we're showing you now is the venue, in fact, a short while ago, where the president is going to deliver that keynote address and, I suppose, breathe some life into this convention. A plane which, dare I say, we are building as we continue to fly. And so as we make sense of all of that, let's bring in political analyst Professor Dirk Kotze, who's with us here with UNISA. So, Prof, we're in your backyard this morning. It's lovely to see you. Thanks for making time to stop by.
Thanks very much. Yes, indeed. My office is just above us here.
And I'm sure you're not used to having so many people around at this time of the morning. But alas, I digress. It's such an important moment, no matter where you stand on the debate, about what it'll take to fix the country's many problems. And it's so interesting that even at this very late hour, there are still so many legitimate questions about what the objective here actually is.
Yes, I think I very much agree with you that there is many questions, and like, for example, the foundations that withdrew from this event, not the process itself. I think to some extent it's actually a good thing, because it opens up the space to say everything has not been predetermined by, let's say, by government, for example, or by the eminent persons group, but that in an event like today is part of the process of defining what it is. If it was everything predetermined, everything in perfect order, then many people will say, but why are we here, in the first instance? So I think the onus is very much now on the participants who are here to make a success of it. And to demonstrate that it's not a replication of last year's election, because the election was a legitimate election and it served a very specific purpose, and that is to give a mandate to incoming government what are the main issues in terms of policy issues and how should they be addressed. So this is not in the first instance this event or this process responsibility to do the same thing. Now the question is, what is the bigger issues, in a sense, that must be addressed by that, and to give more opportunity for citizens to be on an ongoing basis involved in it, and not only at an event like an election.
Yeah, and we often make the point that the country's democracy is constantly at work. Often we focus on that during elections, which is a 5-year cycle, but I suppose in some respects herein lies a unique opportunity to take part in this democracy that we always boast about to the rest of the world, about how rigorous and constantly evolving it is.
Yes, that is indeed so. And I think, I'm starting to say it now more and more, is that the finger points more towards us as the citizens, and not so much only the government or the political parties. It actually says to us, we haven't participated enough up to now. And we don't use the opportunities that are already there, public participation opportunities, whether it's in the ward committees, whether it is where there's new legislation in the pipeline and there's public, whether it's IDP for local government. These are all opportunities for us. Very few people participated. Now even elections, the voter turnout is going down. Where's the young people?
Yeah.
It's a challenge for the young people of South Africa, this event.
And sorry to interrupt you there, Prof. I see the Speaker of the National Assembly, you'll make your point in just a moment, arriving as well, Togotitiza, who is in some ways the head of one of 3 arms of the state. Of course, we know we've got the executive, led by President Cyril Ramaphosa, the judiciary, led by Chief Justice Mandisa Maya, and Togotitiza is the Speaker of the legislature sitting in Parliament. And so she too, I suppose, her presence here, certainly one to be observed, especially where you consider that, at least if Nhlanhla Mkhonazi's allegations are anything to go by, everybody's neck, so to speak, is on the chopping block. But I apologize, Prof, you're still making the point about how it's really incumbent on citizens to make of this the success that they want it to be.
Yes, indeed so. I think what a key issue is going to be, what will be the format of the follow-up of now, They talk about that it will be decentralized to the wards, I personally don't think that's a good idea, because then it means in some cases, let's say in some of the townships, the people are going to talk only to themselves, The diversity, the issues, the complications, the contradictions must come together in this type of conversation, in this type of dialogue. So I think there is space in order to think about creatively about what will be the format in which it can go spread out across the country, but in a way in which it will make an impact. It should deal with issues about our national identity issues. For example, this matter about genocide, which went to Washington, D.C., it should actually be here. It should be discussed here. And from all the different perspectives, in order to come to a conclusion of where do we stand. The relationship between the government and the private sector has always been complicated since 1994. This is an opportunity to start to talk about how do you come together, how do you build trust between them to have a common purpose ultimately, type of a social compact. So I think these are the opportunities that exist. They are not excluded yet from the possible agendas that will be there. But I hope it unleashes a type of a creativity from the bottom up about and use these opportunities in order to reach these issues that to a large extent we haven't talked about. Some people say this creates the opportunity of an economic Odessa,
Right.
which is also not excluded from these discussions.
Yeah. As you're speaking, you're opening so many different cans of worms that if we were to ventilate the issues, I think would be here until the next election. And so my question really, Prof, becomes, if this gathering and the dialogue that is to follow is to be a success, how important is it to define clearly what exactly we want to achieve, given just how vast the issues are? I mean, we can go from those, allegations of genocide apparently being committed in the country, which is to do with our bilateral relations with different countries, to the controversy now around the army chief going to Iran on an unsanctioned visit, down to Dantam Konaz's allegations of interference, which he says stretches all the way into the judiciary, the executive, involves politicians, to our race relations. And as I say this, I'm reminded of the controversy around Gayton McKenzie and the use of the K word. I mean, the list really goes on and on and on. And in my mind, that's not something we could sort just by gathering to discuss the issues. So again, how important is it to really, almost in a razor-sharp way, define what exactly it is we're here to do and what achieving it looks like?
Well, I think that's the ideal objective, and I fully agree with you that is that's the message that must go out from here. These are the more clear objectives of what this initiative or this dialogue is supposed to be, and what are the possible end products or objectives to reach. I'm not sure that this event is enough in order to have a very sharp definition of it. But what they are going to do is, what's on the agenda is that they must establish a steering committee. Now, again, that's not very well defined at the moment, what it is, what it's going to do. As well as this eminent persons group that clearly is not going to stop at this event here, but that will play a role. I've discussed earlier this morning with Mr. Rolf Meyer, and he's clearly thinking about the way forward, not about today necessarily so much. So these are all aspects that I think there must be more clarity about it. That's an absolute bottom line. But how it is going to unfold in practical terms, I think this is something which is still will be open-ended, and where we as the citizens have a role to play. I think we must not expect that everything will be predetermined for us. And I think that will defeat the purpose of this process, is that there must be enough space for us to be able also to define how we want to be involved and how we want to be represented in this.
Fair enough. Before I let you go then, Prof, I started off by mentioning how it feels like this process really started when the former president in Thabo Mbeki, as he was taking stock of 30 years of our democracy, I think it was April last year, he spoke about corruption, just how vast infrastructural decay is. I mean, the cities that we live in and around simply don't look like what they used to, certainly don't look like what we hope they should, because of governance faults, quite frankly. And fast forward almost, in fact, more than a year since then, the man himself is casting doubt on this entire process. Just this week, the foundation, under his name, releasing a scathing letter where they call into question the legitimacy even of this gathering as the rooms fill up with senior government officials. And I'm struggling to kind of place what citizens should make of that.
It complicates it. Yes, it indeed complicates it. It complicates also it's complicated also because of the other foundations who are not there. It includes the Steve Biko Foundation, which I think will bring in sort of the black consciousness component of our political spectrum. It includes the F.W. de Klerk Foundation. It includes the Desmond and the Tutu Foundation. So it is a diverse group in themselves. And for them to almost unanimously decide not to participate, it is a message that I think many people are asking questions, what does it mean for us? But I think it has to a large extent been influenced by President Mbeki. He is regarded as the father figure of this idea of a national dialogue. And if he feels uncomfortable with it, then I think the others will follow him. I think a lot has to do also with his relationship with the current government, to be quite honest with you. And I think he feels that the government has become too prominent and that the foundations are not receiving the space in order to play the role that he believes that they should play. So I think it's a difference of opinion at that level, which is not impossible to resolve ultimately. Because once this weekend is over, and it is unfolded to the rest of the country, the foundations can still play a very important role in that. And I hope they will do that. Right. They will give the direction from their side of what should happen, and that it doesn't come back, everything comes back to the government and the infrastructure and the processes that's determined by government.
Sure, fair enough. And, as you say that, I can't help but emphasize the fact that they haven't pulled out of the national dialogue, right? I think that's an important distinguishing factor to kind of emphasize. They just have a real question about the planning, the funding, and in fact the legitimacy of this particular gathering, saying that they're worried that it'll become government-led when it was always meant to be citizen-centered.
Yes.
And I suppose as we continue taking stock of all of the different voices, even about the process, I wonder how much credence you reckon there is in that criticism. Questions, for example, that largely remain unanswered about how much all of this is going to cost.
Well, that is something. Luckily, UNISA is now here to take some of the costs over.
Right.
But cost is a factor, but at the same time, you can't do something properly and do it cheap, because then people will say, well, that there's no transport, there's no food, there's no accommodation, and there's no infrastructure for a process. So one has to find somewhere a middle ground between that, I would say if this can really produce results that with long-term effect, then maybe that 700 million is worth it. That's the type of investment that will be then necessary for it. But that's with a big proviso is the if. If it is going to produce those outcomes, those results, and it does not become something just a talk shop, as some people are saying.
Yeah, that's the real concern. All right, at around 23 minutes towards 10 o'clock, if you've just joined us, this is a special broadcast of The Agenda coming to you from UNISA's main campus in Pretoria. This is the venue for the first of several national conventions, which, if you like, are meant to provide some kind of blueprint, a guide, if you like, for the national dialogue, which is going to take place at a date yet to be determined. As you can hear, it is buzzing. There are a number of people who are present, both, I suppose, those recognizable to you at home and perhaps some of whom you'll hear from for the first time. The room we're showing you now is the main auditorium where the president is going to deliver the keynote address at around 11 o'clock or so, at least if the program is anything to go by. We've managed to spot the president. He has arrived, and in fact, our Ntantla managed to just squeeze in a quick question about where he's at, where his mind is at, given everything that's been said about the process to this point. And to summarize the president's response, he basically said, watch the space. And you'll make of that what you will from where you're seated, given the many legitimate questions, as I mentioned earlier on, that exist. And in fact, the many people who feel that the process that is currently underway should in fact have taken place differently. We're at UNISA's main campus, and they in many ways have shouldered some of the burden that comes with the logistical requirements of this particular event. For one, we've heard that the university is offering this venue free of charge.